Welcome to the 7th installment of Speaking of Poetry. I'm Rennie McQuilkin, publisher of Antrim House Books, whose authors appear once a month on Speaking of Poetry. And we welcome you to this month's episode. We will be bringing you Norah Pollard today, whose father was the celebrated Red Pollard, who rode Seabiscuit to fame and fortune. And as you know, Seabiscuit was a somewhat knock-kneed, wall-eyed son of a gun, and the champion of the era, the defeater of Warhorse. And Norah shares her father Red's spirit. She is the champion of all people, all creatures, out of sync with tradition, and is very much her own person and has her own glory days in her own inimitable fashion. She's the author of 3 books of poetry. She has appeared widely in various venues in this area, the Sunken Garden Poetry Festival, Mystic Arts Cafe. She has been often featured by Garrison Keillor on the Writer's Almanac, where you may have seen her. At the University of Bridgeport, she won the Academy of American Poets Prize. But more importantly, she's one of the most wonderful, exciting poets and readers of poetry anywhere. And her poetry, her life really revolves around the area where she lives, which is where the Housatonic River meets Long Island Sound, and you will hear many reverberations of that very special area where the tides come and go, and where there is life of all kinds, both on the beach and on the docks. And without more ado, I'd like to introduce you to Norah Pollard.
Thank you so much, Rennie. That's lovely. You overdid it, of course. My first poem, I'll begin with my last job. You know, poets have to work too, and which is unfortunate, but hey, pays the mortgage, and I got a poem out of it. The poem is called The Ferroletto Steel Company Receptionist. The middle-aged receptionist sleeping at the phone or working the crosswords like her fate when she's awake is me. Sometimes I'll file my fingernails. It's expected. Sometimes I'll look at the pictures from the coffee table magazines. New steel, American metal markets, modern metals. My face, never much, is jowly now. The cream puff breasts are crepes, and I've a wattle. But my voice and my legs, they're what I had, and that's what I've got. After 31 years, you'd think I'd answer automatic as Pavlov's dog. But I pull out of me, Ferroletto steel, may I help? All curious and honeyed with sex, a saxophone voice. And I make you feel good for calling. My tongue says steel, but you hear skin, good whiskey, harmonicas, and money. I got a kick out of that. Of course, that's not what I really did at work. I would have been out on my butt a long time ago. I'm going to read a poem, you know, about my brother. After he died, I saw him everywhere. And grief does strange things. This poem is called What is Lost. I say, I lost my brother in April. Lost. As if I looked hard enough in his workshop, down Home Depot's aisles, in the woods, I'd find him again. Sometimes I think I see his lanky body loping down Grove Street, his hands jammed in his pockets, his black cap, the lilt in his feet. Or I'll see him passing me in the cab of his Kenworth, heading south on I-95. I see him some evenings through the foggy smoke shop window picking up his Pall Malls. I see him by the misting 10-mile river with his traps and his dog. I see him. I see him. I don't cry for him. I look for him. He never comes home. Catullus says, what you see is lost, set down as lost. In this morning's fog in front of the steel company's old brick front, they cut down the 3 elegant firs that glittered in the rain and housed the birds. I watched until they took the tops and fed them to the chipper. I stood and stared at the big empty hole where they had been. Then I went around to the back of the building where the trains pick up steel headed for Weirton, and I leaned against the skids of coils, and I wept. This next poem, yesterday was Valentine's Day, so now I can be bloody-minded and read you a poem about the loss of love, which, if you love, you risk, you stand to lose. This is called Winter's Come. What I remember is your mouth, firm and sweet as the flesh of the plum, the way your tongue would idle like a small, sweet snake among the stones of my teeth. What I remember is lying naked with you, happy and languorous, all the summer afternoons by the lake's edge. We'd watch the swans turn and turn. There is a dying that comes slow. The heart hangs on the way the leaf hangs on the oak all winter, refusing to let go, swinging in circles to the measure of the wind. Your lips. Do you remember how you would kiss me on the lids? First one, then the other. This poem is about what's important. Heavy, right? Heavy poem. To consider. 80 degrees in a high wind, who could believe such sumptuousness? The peonies are so fat they lie down. The forbidden purple of the Byzantine irises, their frilled and membranous flesh is temptation and ruin. The old pine, leaning into the sky, is covered all over with a million new tiny gold cones, like little Chinese babies' pricks. In the dark caves of the pine branches, the black crows scream in exultation. When the world can be like this, with the high swaying sycamore and the poplar tossing in the wind, and the crows and the blue jays strutting around in their simple lordliness, and white elf flowers spy in the grass, and the honest worms under it all. When the world can be like this, Why do we let the money man break us? When the sky pours down its blue balm and the wind curves to our throat, when the rain fingers our hair and the tolerant earth carries our feet, why do we let the coin shut our eyes? You know, I'm going to do something dangerous and read new poems because, you know, you get excited about them, and when you have a new poem, you want to celebrate, and you're so glad that you have something left in you. Let's see. I think I'll read Happiness first. Happiness, that's another heavy title, right? Are you happy? Don't ask yourself that question. The answer is so often, no, not yet, not quite, tomorrow. I used to be. If you say yes, you probably mean, I'm not dead yet. Things could be worse. Someday my prince will come. I am happy in the Lord, though he never comes to tea. You might even think you mean content. The cow in the meadow is content. Does that mean the cow is happy? The suckled baby is finally content. Does that mean the baby is happy? One day in the parking lot of the superstore, you'll be walking across asphalt to get your prescription for your thyroid issue, your cholesterol issue, your anxiety issue, and possibly you're also going to pick up some cat food. You'll be dodging cars and shopping carts, eyes half-time on the ground looking for change, when you'll happen to look up indifferently and see a marvelously wide sky full of moving herds of round white clouds. Then you'll see a small yellow bird flung like a buttercup by the wind across the span of the meadow. Your heart will give a hop as if paddle jumped. Everything brightens. You'll feel shoeless and light as egg white. You may even laugh softly to yourself, a little like the mad woman in the attic. It all lasts 7 seconds. Then, wander all through your body. You'll go into the store to get the meds that help you keep you poking along, and the cat food that keeps the cats content. And that was happiness. So quick you might have missed it. That's how it comes. Be ready, the yellow bird says. Let's see. And then this one, this is really dangerous. I finished this yesterday. You know, and I will be carrying it around with me for, you know, more weeks, making a little fix here and a little fix there. And, you know, Paul Valery, the poet, he once said in one of his quotable quotes, a poem is never finished. It is just abandoned. Spring morning, Academy Hill, Stratford, Connecticut, 1978. Now, I live in Stratford, and this hill is a block away from me, and it's a small little hill, but at the top it has a giant Civil War monument. Joe Garrett, carrying his coffee out to his porch one fog-drifting spring morning, looked out across his lawn to the Civil War monument on Academy Hill, with the flagpole beside it and the flag in a heap on the ground. It took some seconds for him to take in the man swinging from the flagpole ropes. Joe dropped his coffee, hollered to his wife, and ran up the hill with a meat knife. With a rage saved for murdering, he sawed at the ropes and got the man down where he lay on the new grass, hauling air like a fish, his feet flopping around in the yellow tulips. Joe leaned over him and saw he was a man-boy. And when the suicide opened his eyes and tried to speak, Joe said, "Don't talk." Then Joe sucked in his cheeks and whistled the way you would if you'd made a good catch. Then he tapped the boy hard on the cheek and sat him up hard. He knelt beside the boy, but for some minutes, while the boy gagged and shook, he just stayed. Then Joe said, "If you did this out of shame, you're a fool. And if you did this for love, you're a worse fool. But if you hanged yourself to save the world the bother, you're a conservationist, and we need you here." Then Joe got him standing with an arm around his neck and got him down the hill to his house, where he gave him whiskey and put vegetable oil on the rope burn under his jaw, and asked him his name and listened to his story and all the blubbering. Then Joe gave him 2 more shots and told him a joke about a Polish pianist, and when the kid managed to smile, Joe said, "You'll be all right. I'll drive you to your folks." And he poured himself a shot. He stopped at Lowell's Hardware on the way home to get new rope, returned to the hill, shook out the flag, and hoisted it up. The flag waved languidly in a little breeze. Joe Garrett looked around at the clutter of war memorials on Academy Hill, 8 in all, and multiplying. His eyes pausing at the memorial for disabled vets and its inscription, "If I cannot speak good of my comrade, I will not speak ill of him," and wondered if the engraver thought about that wars were waged against gossip. And what did speaking good or ill have to do with getting a leg blown off? And then he looked off at the tulips and said out loud, "That's the craziest thing I ever saw." Not sure himself if he meant a boy hanging in the spring air like an empty duffel bag, or the silly inscription, or the 8 huge granite war memorials rising up gray from the blameless tulips. You know, it's difficult to be a mother sometimes. I'm going to read to you an incident that if they heard about it, DCF would be all over me, or would have at the time. It is called The Great Chicken Leg Incident. On his plate, broccoli, smashed potatoes, and a stricken chicken leg. The boy sits sullen as a possum. "Why do we always have to have chicken leg?" he asks, tapping his fork on his plate. She says, "Eat your dinner." Hard hours spent at work and the heat of the kitchen in her words. "Chicken legs are gross," he seethes. His mother sighs. While she gazes tiredly around the table for the salt, he slides his fork tines under the chicken and hits the handle hard. The leg flips across the salad, hits the gravy boat, and skids 2 yards across the linoleum. It leaves a greasy line like snail slime. The boy's sister sucks in her breath. No one speaks. The mother rises up, retrieves the crusty leg, places it with exaggerated carefulness on his plate, and says low and through her teeth, "If you ever do that again, I will wipe your face with it." She sits as though strung on wires, savagely butters her bread. 7 beats. The boy begins to hum Rhinestone Cowboy. He swings his feet. He casually leans on his elbow. The fork casually inches out, eases under the leg, and he launches it. The leg in the air, the leg in the air, the leg arcing, twisting, pitch-poling, the leg descending, the leg exploding in the kitty box, litter flying like buckshot. Then that stillness, as after the lava solidified on Pompeii. The girl is transfixed, the boy alert, red, jittery, a smile playing on his face. The mother rises, being a woman of her word. She pulls the leg out of the clumped litter and picks the litter off with exaggerated delicacy. And then they're on the floor, the leg in his ear, under the table, the leg down his neck, oily bits, alley-oop, under the chair, greasing his eyes, half Nelson, fat gobbocks, hip toss down around the trash bin, the leg under his pants, tiger driver, the crusty pimpled chicken leg everywhere at once, golden boy head, mother eye flash, sister pulling her knees to her chest, boy half sobbing but almost laughing, mother on the floor, hair in greasy strings, wielding a chicken leg like a caveman's club. It is finished. They stand panting. His hair sticks out in peaks. He glows with grease shine and fury. "Now go and take a shower," the mother says, pointing like God. And does he? Of course not. With her last bit of strength, she catches him up by his shirt, pulls and pounds him, thrashing up the stairs, flings him in the shower like a bag of eels. 15, 20, 25 minutes, the mother chewing determinedly the cold green beans and the girl watching her tensely. The sound of gallons of water glugging down the pipes in the walls like the laugh of a loony. Finally, the girl says in a half whisper, "I don't think he's going to come out." "No," says the mother. She lays down her fork, takes off her apron, lifts her sweater from the hook, says, "I'll be walking," and out the door. She stumps along through the field, lungs clenched up, breathing shallow with anger. Getting up through the pine grove, then slowing, then wandering along Shore Road until she comes to the river. And does she throw herself in? Of course not. She takes a long, deep breath of the night air. A little curling smile tugs at one side of her mouth. She stands looking out at the rustling river, seeing not the river, but the magnificent stubbornness, his shining gold-greased self, that fire in his eye. She turns home. Thank you.
Norah, thank you for that. I think that you've made us happy for more than 7 seconds, perhaps 27 and a half minutes. Your poems are, as you said, about happiness or the feeling of happiness, light as egg whites and yellow birds flashing through the sky. Thank you for those yellow birds.
Well, thank you for having me, Rennie. It's really fun. It's always a joy to read anybody's poetry. I love poetry, and it's always a joy to be with you, Rennie. Thank you.
And let us both thank Ken Picard, the producer of this show, and Karen Handeville, who runs the SCTV so beautifully. And I invite you to visit AntrimHouseBooks.com to read more about Norah Pollard, read some sample poems, and perhaps look at some other Antrim House poets. And please come back another month for the next installment of Speaking of Poetry.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.